Well, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to start by thanking all the organizers for letting me present my research today. I hope you'll find it interesting and you have good comments that can be useful for my next research. So today my presentation will focus on the destruction of cultural heritage by ISIS between 2014 and 2019. The main question I will be addressing is what is the place of cultural heritage in times of armed conflict? What is its role? And this question stems from several interviews, several readings that I have done at the beginning of my PhD, where people were just saying, oh, there's nothing to talk about. They're just crazy people. They're blinded by their religion, and you don't have to look beyond that. That's all there is to know about cultural heritage destructions by the Islamic State. So I wasn't really satisfied with it, and I tried to deconstruct and analyze the census. And my results indicate that there are three consecutive and coexisting conceptions of heritage that I will successively unpack during this presentation. The first one is heritage as a victim. The second one will be heritage as a way to target social cohesion or human rights. And also, I've found a third explanation that would be that heritage is a military tool, a military asset. And I will present a typology I developed based on different interviews and analysis of propaganda material. So let's start with the first dimension. Cultural heritage is very often presented as a victim of the conflict. Well, conflict deals with violence. It's a violence time and it results in chaos. And then destructions are stemming from the proximity with military targets, or they considered as collateral damage of the military weapons deployed during this conflict. As a consequence, heritage becomes a passive victim of violence and a passive victim of the conflict. It doesn't play a role. It's a negative or passive role in the hostility. That would be the first answer to that. And then the other aspect I remarked is that the authors of destructions are very often criminalized. And in the case of ISIS, the criminalization process comes mostly from the UN and more particularly UNESCO. And I've found so many echoes in my interviews where people just said, they're crazy. For example, I'm quoting an interview who said, it was a reason of ignorance, barbarism, mad people. It's their mentality. That's how sick they are. So when it comes to characterizing those actions, Dario Gamboni noted there's a difference between the label iconoclasm and the label vandalism. Iconoclasm is more compatible with the neutrality, whereas vandalism is always stigmatizing and implying blindness, ignorance, or stupidity. And it's really the case for ISIS when observers, specialists, and even the scientific community talks about ISIS destruction, they always refer to vandalism. So the semantics is really important here. And so all this heritage as a victim is what we have been able to observe as the first answer and the first answer to the phenomena that appeared in 2013, massive and systematic destruction of heritage by ISIS. So to sum up this first part, we can see that there's a depoliticization process of cultural heritage destruction in the sense that the two narratives that come into play are, well, the victim and the passive rule of the heritage, and also the barbaric dimension of the authors. I will now move to the second dimension of destruction, and that is that heritage, destroying heritage is a way to target local communities. This narrative came into play in the late 1990s with the former Yugoslavian conflict and the Balkan conflict. So here, targeting cultural symbols and historical narratives of minorities is a way for some groups to assert dominance. We can think about the Yazidi people that have been massacred by ISIS members. And by erasing or manipulating the history and the heritage of those groups, perpetrators aim to weaken their identity, their memory, their sense of belonging, and thereby destabilizing their social fabric. In other words, it's a way to deny the other's right to live. And for example, in the Balkans, the ethnic divisions and the ethnic targeting has been used to fuel hostilities between the different groups and the different parties involved in the conflict. And actually, today, we can see that UNESCO is actually using this social cohesion narrative to rebuild the city of Mosul, and they're promoting a vision of the city of Mosul in Iraq based on peaceful cohabitation between communities in kind of a idealized way, if we can say so. But how does it relate to security? It's really interesting. The Syrian and Iraqi case is really interesting because, well, it has led to the adoption of several UN Security Council resolutions that are actually focusing exclusively on cultural heritage. And it's really interesting because the Security Council actually acknowledges that the destruction of and the looting of cultural heritage can fuel and exacerbate conflict and hamper post-conflict national revolution, thereby undermining security, stability, governance, social, economic, and cultural development of affected states. So there's a direct link between cultural heritage destruction and human security. And that's what is being brought forward by the quite recently, actually, with the Syrian and Iraqi case. But I've also found a third explanation and a third role for heritage, that is heritage as a military asset. In other words, heritage moves from security to strategy. Destroying something is a means to achieve specific strategic objectives. And I've tried to identify several of these objectives. The first one would be retaliation. To target something is a way to, well, retaliate to the enemy's action. And for example, the Eiffel Tower in Paris is a good example of that. So of course, it's not a real image of the Eiffel Tower catching on fire and then collapsing into the Seine. Don't worry, that hasn't happened yet. But the thing is that right after France launched airstrikes in Syria on ISIS positions, this video was released saying, "Okay, you target us, we target you." And the Eiffel Tower exemplifies that action. Second thing, coercion. So here, what's interesting is that destroying something is a means by forcing the enemy to change its behavior, its military behavior. So that, for that matter, it can be related to components, the concept coined by Thomas Schelling. To exemplify that, one of my interviewees recounts a situation where he was at the UN offices in Erbil, Iraq, and he received the call from one of the Daesh members who explicitly asked him to stop the campaign he was leading to raise awareness about the Yazidi cause. Otherwise, the ISIS members, would actually continue the destructions and also the rapes and the murders in the Sijra region. So violence towards heritage is a way to force somebody, a party in a conflict, to stop what he is doing so far. Also, so that's the third criteria I identified, is that targeting heritage is the way to target the enemy as well, not in retaliation. I will exemplify that. So the Saida Zainab shrine, which is a Shia shrine near Damascus in Syria, it was targeted by ISIS. And this destruction actually prompted Ayatollah al-Sistani, so the Shia religious leader, who until then had been calling for restraint and not responding to ISIS provocations. He issued a fatwa announcing jihad against ISIS. Sorry, from destruction of this shrine on, it really started the military confrontation has really started between Shia militias and ISIS. So that's really interesting as well. Finally, we have destruction as a way to depict the enemy's defeat. And that's, for example, the case of the Colosseum in Rome. So here we can see the Colosseum that's completely covered up with sand. And the only thing we can see, the only thing living is the ISIS tent with the flag at the center of the picture. So here we can clearly see, so you don't exist anymore and we won. And that's, of course, a way to pressure the enemy and play on the psychological dimension of it. And then finally, targeting heritage is a way, to posturing as identified by several military experts. So here, posturing is defined as a display of military capabilities designed to enhance the reputation of an actor. And here, here's the case of Palmyra that has been used as a setup to amplify, I would say, and enhance ISIS dominance capacity to actually hold ground in Syria and Iraq. So to quickly conclude, what I want to say is that so we have these three successive but also coexisting visions of what is heritage during a conflict. And it's really interesting that because it's not specific to ISIS. We've seen so many different examples. For example, Donald Trump threatening to retaliate by bombing several Iranian cultural sites if Americans were armed by Iranian forces. But also Russia in Ukraine is targeting very specific monuments and sites and objects that either signal either a way to retaliate or just a way to attack enemies on the ground. I thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to your questions later. Thank you.